Hello and welcome. You remember the invoked devastation, don't you? That terrible moment when the Suel mages of power, after decades of escalating conflict with the Baklunish Empire, unleashed magics so profound that reality itself shuddered. The historical records tell us it occurred in 5094 SD, though the exact mechanism remains one of Greyhawk's enduring mysteries. Some scholars suggest a planar bleed from the Grey Wastes. Others point to powers even more terrible. What we know for certain is this: the Suel struck first, and when they did, the devastation was absolute. The Baklunish Empire, which had stretched from the Sulhout Mountains to the Dramage Ocean for over 1,500 years, fell in catastrophic fashion. Cities that had stood for countless generations vanished, their populations purged from Earth so completely that few signs remain of the great civilization that once thrived there. The fertile heartlands transformed into what would become known as the Dry Steppes, a harsh, waterless expanse where once great rivers and forests had flourished. The invoked devastation swept across the western lands like a wave of annihilation, and where it passed, the world itself was fundamentally changed. You felt it, didn't you? That moment when the balance that had held for ages shattered beyond repair. The Suel had done the unthinkable, and now you stand in the aftermath, surrounded by silence where there should be life, by emptiness where there should be civilization. But you are not alone. Historical accounts suggest that some Baklunish magi survived the devastation. Those who were far enough from the centers of destruction, protected by sufficient wards, or simply blessed by fortune. Canon records indicate that a cadre of Baklunish wizard clerics gathered in the aftermath, drawn to one of the few structures that withstood the cataclysm. Tovag Baragu, the great stone circle known as the navel of the Earth. This ancient site, located on the shore of what was once Lake Udrukankar near the Baklunish capital, somehow remained unscathed while everything around it was obliterated. You find yourself approaching this sacred place, one among perhaps dozens of survivors, though the exact number is lost to history. The stone circle stretches over a mile in diameter, comprised of 5 concentric rings of smooth white pillars made from an unknown rock. These pillars show no weathering, no tool marks, no scars from the devastation that raged around them. They simply stand, as they have for untold ages, defying both time and catastrophe. As you arrive, you see others emerging from the devastated lands. Each carries the weight of impossible loss etched into their features. These are masters of the mystical arts, individuals who devoted lifetimes to understanding the fundamental forces of reality based on what survived in later Baklunish traditions. We can infer these were likely both wizards and clerics. The term wizard clerics appears in the living Greyhawk Gazetteer, suggesting a synthesis of arcane and divine power, unique to Baklunish magical practice. You recognize the types, if not the specific individuals lost to history. an elder keeper of eastern sanctuaries, her robes still bearing ash from her destroyed homeland, her eyes burning with grief, transformed into terrible determination, a master of meditative disciplines who survived because he was deep in isolated practice when the devastation struck, who ran for days driven by certainty that he was needed, a young adept of binding magics, barely past her apprenticeship, but already formidable, carrying the guilt of survival. Twins whose synchronized magical practice was legendary, who emerged from their warded sanctuary to find the world transformed. Each survivor carries their story of escape. One describes seeing her entire city consumed, buildings dissolving like structures made of sand. Another tells of the taste of the air as the devastation approached, the wrongness of it, the sense of reality itself becoming unstable. A third speaks of finding nothing where his family's estate had stood. Not even rubble, just emptiness. You move among them, feeling the currents of power that flow through the gathering. Each wizard cleric radiates mastery hard-won through years of study and practice. Together, you represent what remains of Baklunish magical tradition, the final repository of wisdom that took millennia to develop. But beneath the disciplined exteriors, you sense something else rage. Not the impulsive fury of the untrained, but something older and deeper. This is the rage of those who have lost everything, who have seen their entire civilization erased, who understand that the world will never again be what it was. One of the elder magi, history has not preserved her name, though her role seems clear from what followed moves to the center of the innermost stone circle. She doesn't speak at first, simply stands there, letting her presence draw everyone's attention. When she finally does speak, her voice carries weight that suggests both authority and profound grief. "We are all that remains," she says, and you feel the truth of it settling over the assembly. The Baklunish Empire is gone, destroyed in the Suel's act of ultimate aggression. Our cities, our learning, our people reduced to memory and dust. The silence that follows is absolute. Around you, the white pillars of Tovag Baragu stand impassive, ancient witnesses to this gathering of the bereaved and enraged. Another voice speaks, perhaps one who studied the harsher disciplines, whose understanding of cosmic forces came through ascetic denial rather than scholarly contemplation. The question before us is simple, though its answer is not. Do we accept this? Do we fade away the last echoes of a vanished people? Or do we respond? You feel the shift in the atmosphere. The question hangs in the air like a blade suspended on a thread. Everyone knows what respond means. The Suel have committed an atrocity that violates every principle of civilized conduct between powers. They have shown that for them, there are no limits, no lines they will not cross. A younger voice speaks, trembling slightly. Response means vengeance. Vengeance means using powers we have always approached with caution. If we respond in kind, do do we not risk becoming what we have fought against? This objection carries weight, and the debate that follows reflects tensions that must have existed among the survivors. Those who argued for restraint versus those who demanded retribution. Historical evidence suggests the latter view prevailed, but the former was likely present, adding moral complexity to the decision. The debate unfolds with the discipline expected of masters trained in careful thought. But beneath the measured words, the undercurrents are powerful grief threatening to overwhelm, rage seeking outlet, the terrible temptation of revenge against those who struck first. An ancient master speaks, his voice carrying the weight of many lifetimes of accumulated wisdom. If we do nothing, if we allow this crime to stand unanswered, we set a precedent that will echo through all ages to come. We tell the universe that such acts can be committed without consequence. The Suel will turn eastward, emboldened, carrying with them the knowledge that ultimate weapons bring ultimate victory. This argument appears to have been persuasive. The historical record shows that the Baklunish wizard clerics did choose to respond, suggesting that practical concerns about future Suel expansion, combined with the demand for cosmic balance, to override arguments for restraint. Let us be clear about what we discuss, another elder states. This is not merely personal revenge. This is about restoring balance to a universe torn asunder by Suel hubris. They have shown they will stop at nothing to dominate. If we do nothing, they will spread across the Flannies and beyond, and everywhere they go, they will carry the memory of what they did to us, the lesson that unlimited power brooks no restraint. One of the more pragmatic survivors suggests assessing what remains, what power, what knowledge, what resources survived the devastation. This shift from whether to act to how to act signals the direction the gathering is taking. One by one, the wizard clerics begin to share what they brought, what they carry, what knowledge they possess. Based on later accounts and the evidence of what occurred, we can infer they discussed ancient knowledge, protective magics that might be reversed into offensive applications, artifacts and implements passed down through generations. The specific mechanisms remain unknown. Various theories suggest power drawn from the quasi-elemental plane of ash, forces associated with Tovag Baragu itself, or other cosmic sources. What we know with certainty is that they found a way. An elder whose prophecy sight may have guided the group's decision speaks of seeing the future branching before them. We stand at a nexus point. The choice we make here will shape the world for thousands of years. If we act, there will be terrible consequences. If we do not act, those consequences may be worse. You look around at the faces illuminated by the strange light that seems to emanate from Tovag Baragu itself. These are scholars and mystics, philosophers and healers, not warriors or conquerors. They devoted their lives to understanding and harmony. But but they are also survivors of the greatest atrocity their world has ever known. And in their hearts burns a fire that will not be extinguished by arguments of caution. The eldest among them raises her hands for silence. I call for unity of purpose, not unity of thought. We will carry our disagreements and doubts forward, but unity in action. The Baklunish Empire is gone, but we remain. We are its final voice, its last testament. Shall we whisper into the darkness and disappear? Or shall we speak with power, ensuring that the world remembers both what was lost and what that loss cost those who caused it? One by one, the wizard clerics rise in agreement. Some move quickly with fierce determination. Others rise slowly, reluctantly, carrying visible burden. But they rise. Even those who argued for restraint ultimately stand, because beneath all the careful philosophy, there is a fundamental recognition. The Suel must answer for what they have done. You feel the power in the circle intensifying as consensus forms. Perhaps 36 wizard clerics, perhaps more. The sources don't specify exact numbers, each a master of their tradition, each carrying accumulated knowledge and strength. Together, you represent the final flowering of Baklunish magical achievement. And now that achievement will be turned toward a singular purpose. The decision crystallizes not through formal vote, but through collective movement in a single direction. Historical records confirm what happens next. The Baklunish wizard clerics, gathered at Tovag Baragu, will prepare to bring down the Rain of Colorless Fire upon the Suel Imperium. The exact methods remain mysterious, but the result is documented fact. The Suel Empire will be reduced to the sea of dust in response to their own act of devastation. The gathering continues as plans begin to form, responsibilities assigned, ancient knowledge brought forth. The work ahead is immense and dangerous, drawing on powers that should perhaps remain forever beyond mortal reach. But it is work with purpose, and purpose is what keeps the grief from overwhelming you completely. As you stand within Tovag Baragu, feeling the ancient power of the place resonating with your intention, you understand the weight of what has been decided. The Baklunish Empire fell, but it will not die unavenged. The Suel thought they could commit genocide and face no consequences. They will learn differently. They will learn that even in death, the Baklunish remain formidable, that some debts must be paid, that some crimes are too vast to ignore. The decision is made. The path is set. Now comes the work of response, terrible and necessary, a retribution that will shake the world as surely as the devastation itself. The Suel invoked devastation upon the Baklunish. Now the Baklunish will answer with a rain of fire that burns without color. And in that rain, an empire will fall to dust. Section 2. The Magi's Terrible Counsel. The days that follow blur together within the protection of Tovag Baragu. Time moves strangely here. The ancient stone circle seems to exist slightly outside normal temporal flow. a phenomenon that scholars have debated for centuries. You lose track of whether it is morning or evening in the devastated world beyond, whether the sun rises and sets, or whether darkness has claimed the sky permanently. Within these concentric rings of white pillars, you focus solely on the terrible work ahead. The council reconvenes each time enough wizard clerics have completed their meditative preparations. You gather in the innermost circle, forming a ring around the central space where power seems to concentrate naturally. This could be why Tovag Baragu survived the invoked devastation, while everything around it was obliterated. The site itself may possess protective qualities, or perhaps it serves as a nexus where the boundaries between planes grow thin. The ancient peoples who constructed it understood something fundamental about this location, though their specific knowledge has been lost to time. One of the elder magi, a master of planar theory and elemental forces, based on the knowledge she now shares, has taken charge of researching potential responses. You watch as she carefully describes what she has discovered through deep meditation and consultation with forces beyond the material plane. The specifics of what the Baklunish wizard clerics learned remain one of Greyhawk's enduring mysteries. But historical records confirm they found a way to bring catastrophic power to bear against their enemies. Listen, she says, and her voice carries the weight of terrible discovery. Our ancestors who built this place understood that Tovag Baragu sits at a convergence point. The barriers between our world and others are thinner here. This is why the circle endured when everything else fell. It exists partially in multiple realities simultaneously. You lean forward, drawn by the implications. Around you, the other wizard clerics do the same, creating a collective focus that makes the air itself seem to thicken with potential. She continues, choosing her words carefully. There are forces beyond our plane that we might call upon, powers that exist in the spaces between, where elemental fury meets fundamental entropy, where creation touches annihilation. Some theorize these forces dwell in the quasi-elemental plane of ash, that realm where fire meets negative energy. Others suggest connections to even stranger dimensions, places where shadow takes substance and ordinary matter follows different laws. Another elder speaks, one who studies focused on divine rather than arcane sources. We walk a dangerous path if we pursue this. These are not powers meant for mortal hands to wield. The barrier between planes exists for reasons our ancestors understood well. To breach it, to draw forth forces from beyond, and direct them toward our purposes. This is magic of the highest and most dangerous order. You feel the tension in these words, the recognition that what is being contemplated goes beyond normal magical practice. The Baklunish tradition emphasized harmony, balance, working with natural forces rather than dominating them. What is being proposed represents a fundamental departure from that philosophy. A younger voice, The adept of binding magics you noticed earlier asks the question that many are thinking. But how do we distinguish between justice and vengeance? The Suel destroyed us through an act of ultimate evil. If we respond in kind, using powers we have always feared to touch, are we not simply perpetuating a cycle of escalating destruction? Does cosmic balance truly demand we answer atrocity with atrocity? An ancient master, one who has witnessed centuries of the world's turning, responds with measured patience. The universe itself does not care. You are correct. The planes simply exist, following their own nature. But we care. We who remain conscious and aware create meaning through our choices. The Suel made a choice that reduced millions to less than memory. We now choose how that choice is answered. He pauses, letting his words settle. If we do nothing, we declare that such actions have no consequence. We say that consciousness, civilization, millennia of accumulated wisdom, all of it can be erased without response. But if we act, if we ensure that the Suel face consequences commensurate with their crime, we declare that balance must be maintained, that the universe, through us, enforces limits on ultimate power. The debate continues, cycling through arguments both practical and philosophical. Some wizard clerics argue from strategic necessity. The Suel, emboldened by their success, will turn eastward into the Flannies, spreading their dominion, and the lesson that ultimate weapons bring ultimate victory. Others argue from moral imperative. Cosmic balance requires response, even if that response brings its own terrible costs. A pair of wizard clerics whose synchronized practice allows them to work in tandem speak alternating concerns. If we unleash this working, we set a precedent that ultimate weapons once conceived will inevitably be used, that even the most disciplined minds can be corrupted by the temptation of absolute power, that vengeance, however justified it feels, leads only to mutual devastation. The elder who first spoke acknowledges their point. Every path before us leads through darkness. This is the terrible truth we must face. The Suel have already ensured that the world will be diminished. The only question is the nature of that diminishment and what it means for those who come after. As the debate unfolds, another elder begins describing the technical requirements, not in precise detail, for those specifics are lost to history, but in broad strokes that suggest the magnitude of the working. What we contemplate requires perfect synchronization of, will across multiple practitioners. A single wizard cleric, no matter how powerful, cannot channel forces of this magnitude. We must become as one mind, one purpose, one instrument through which cosmic forces flow. This aligns with what historical sources tell us, that the Rain of Colorless Fire was a collective working, requiring the combined power of many Baklunish magi focused through Tovag Baragu toward a singular purpose. The ritual, if we can call it, that will require us to give of ourselves. Another voice adds grimly. We cannot simply direct external power. We must fuel it with our own essence, permanently diminishing our abilities. Those of us who survive will be lesser beings than we are now, forever marked by what we have done. You feel a chill at this revelation. To diminish one's power is to reduce one's very being. For wizard clerics who have spent lifetimes cultivating their abilities, who have merged their consciousness with cosmic forces through decades of discipline, this represents a kind of partial death. You will survive, but you will be fundamentally less. There is more, the elder continues. The nature of what we will create is unusual. This is not simple destruction. Based on the planar forces involved, we can infer that what results will be fire that is not fire, destruction that follows patterns beyond normal causality. It will manifest as something the historical records might call colorless fire, flames without light, heat that burns beyond temperature, annihilation that exists outside the normal flow of cause and effect. She meets the eyes of those around her. Some ancient texts suggest this is what happens when power from certain planes, ash, shadow, or stranger places still, is brought fully into material reality. It burns without consuming fuel. It spreads without following normal patterns. It destroys, but leaves strange remnants, following logic incomprehensible to mortal understanding. The youngest among you whispers, "Why would anyone develop such knowledge? What threat could possibly warrant this response?" The ancient master answers, his memory reaching back to oral traditions from before the empire itself. Our distant ancestors faced existential threats, beings from beyond reality, seeking to unmake or transform our world. They developed ultimate responses as final defenses, hoping never to use them, but preserving the knowledge in case no other option remained. That knowledge was passed down through carefully guarded lineages, kept secret, held as the weapon of absolute last resort. And they never used it, someone asks. They found other ways, he replies. They solved their crises through sacrifice and cleverness rather than ultimate destruction. The knowledge remained theoretical, acknowledged, but never activated. Until now, the words hang unspoken but understood by all. One of the senior wizard clerics stands, and you feel the shift in the gathering's energy. The Suel have given us cause equal to any existential threat. They have not merely attacked our empire, they have erased it. Millions gone in an instant, an entire civilization reduced to scorched memory. If this does not warrant the ultimate response, what possibly could? The debate continues through cycles of day and night, exploring nuances and implications, returning again and again to the central question. Is this right? Not expedient, not justified, not understandable, but right in the deepest sense of cosmic order and moral truth. You listen as the technical requirements are discussed in greater detail, though always in terms general enough that the specific mechanisms remain unclear, as they do in all historical accounts. The working will require components drawn from multiple sources, rituals of purification that will take weeks, careful calculations of how much essence each participant must sacrifice. The collective power must be focused and directed across vast distances, targeted with precision to ensure the effect manifests where intended. And if we succeed, someone asks, what exactly happens to the Suel? The response is grim. Based on what we understand of the forces we will invoke, the effect will be catastrophic and complete. Where their cities stand, there will be only ash and dust. Where their fields grow, there will be only desolation. Their entire homeland will become a wasteland that will endure for thousands of years, a monument to the consequences of ultimate hubris. The silence that follows is profound. You are describing the annihilation of an entire people. Not just the Suel military or leadership, but everyone, farmers and scholars, children and elders, artists and craftspeople, millions of lives, each one as precious and unique as any Baklunish life, will simply cease to exist. The young adept speaks again, tears visible now. I understand necessity. I understand justice, but I cannot reconcile myself to this. We speak of millions who had no part in the decision to invoke devastation. We propose to kill children who do not yet understand what their leaders have done. How is this not simply evil answering evil? One of the synchronized practitioners responds gently. Because those children would grow into adults who benefit from what their empire did to us. Because the Suel civilization, if allowed to continue, will spread across the world, carrying the lesson that ultimate weapons lead to ultimate victory. Because sometimes there are no good choices, only necessary ones. But we become what we oppose, the young one insists. The Suel destroyed us out of fear and greed. We destroy them out of rage and vengeance. Where is the moral difference? The senior wizard cleric's voice cuts through the debate, sharp and clear. The moral difference is that we did not choose this path. The Suel chose it for us. We sought only to live in peace, to develop our civilization, to explore the mysteries of existence. They came for us with armies, and when we defended ourselves, they came with annihilation. Every choice we make now exists within the context they created. She moves to the center of the circle, her presence commanding attention. I will tell you something. I have spent days in deep meditation, opening myself to the currents of probability, letting possible futures wash through my consciousness. And I have seen what comes if we act, and what comes if we do not. You lean forward. Divination is not to be taken lightly, especially from one as skilled in reading the patterns of fate. If we act, she continues, the Suel Empire falls. Our working consumes their homeland, creating a wasteland that future ages will know as the Sea of Dust. Some Suel survive, those who fled eastward, those who were traveling distant from their heartland. They spread across the Flannies, never again achieving dominance, forever marked by knowledge that ultimate power brings ultimate consequence. She pauses, her eyes distant. If we do not act, the Suel turn eastward immediately. Emboldened by their success against us, they begin campaigns of conquest, unprecedented in scope. They refine their devastation magic, learning to control it, to direct it with precision. Within generations, they dominate the entire known world, bringing their philosophy of power above all to every corner of Oerth. And would that be so terrible? The young adept asks. Civilization spreads, knowledge advances, perhaps humanity prospers under their guidance. The diviner's laugh is bitter. You have not seen what I have seen. The Suel prosperity is built on subjugation and the threat of ultimate destruction. They create a world where might always makes right, where power is the only virtue that matters. They become corrupted not from outside, but from within, transformed by their own unchecked ambition. She looks around the circle, meeting each gaze. The choice before us is not between good and evil. It is between two different futures, both dark, both terrible. But in one future, the lesson is learned that unlimited power brings unlimited destruction. In the other, the lesson is that unlimited power brings unlimited dominion. Which future do we choose to create? The council continues through days and nights, arguments refined, objections examined from every angle. Gradually, reluctantly, even those who argued most strongly for restraint begin to accept the terrible necessity of action. This appears to be what happened historically. The Baklunish wizard clerics, despite whatever internal disagreements they may have had, ultimately achieved consensus. The ancient master speaks one final time, his voice carrying 8 centuries of accumulated wisdom. I will not live to see the distant consequences of what we do. My time is nearly ended regardless of our choice, but I will spend my remaining days, my remaining power, ensuring that what we do is remembered not as mindless vengeance, but as cosmic necessity. The rain of colorless fire will fall, and it will be terrible, but it will be the Baklunish people's final testament, our statement to the cosmos that some crimes cannot stand unanswered. The master of planar forces stands, her studies now transformed into terrible purpose. Then we are decided. We will draw upon the forces that exist beyond our plane, whether from the realm where ash meets entropy, from shadow dimensions, or from stranger places still. We will focus them through Tovag Baragu, this ancient nexus that has survived when all else fell. We will give of ourselves, diminishing our own essence to fuel the working, and we will bring upon the Suel Empire a rain of fire that burns without color, but consumes absolutely, transforming their homeland into a wasteland as complete and terrible as they made of ours. You feel the decisions settling into reality, becoming fixed and irrevocable. The philosophical debate is over. Now comes the practical work, gathering what is needed, performing purifications, preparing mind and spirit for the ultimate working. You will become instruments of cosmic balance, channels through which retribution flows into a world torn asunder by Suel ambition. The senior wizard cleric raises her hands, and power flows from her, visible as a shimmer in the air between the white pillars of Tovag Baragu. Let us begin. The Suel believe they have won, that their invoked devastation ended all threat from the west. Let them enjoy their illusion. Let them celebrate their victory, consolidate their gains, plan their eastern expansion. We will work here, in this sacred place, in the deep communion with forces beyond normal ken. And when we are ready, when every element is prepared and every participant properly purified, we will speak the words and perform the workings that will breach the barriers between worlds. We will rain colorless fire upon the Suel Empire, and in that rain, an age will end. The wizard clerics begin to disperse, each to their assigned preparations. You remain for a moment, standing within the innermost circle of Tovag Baragu, feeling the strange resonance that emanates from this place. You place your hand on one of the smooth white pillars and sense the age in it, the patient endurance. This structure will outlast everything: the Suel Empire, the Baklunish memory, even the physical scars that both civilizations will leave upon Earth. But before the ending comes the preparation. You turn from the pillar and follow the others, moving toward the outer circles where the work of ultimate vengeance will be undertaken. The Magi's terrible council has concluded. The decision is made. Now comes the doing, and in the doing, the transformation of grief and necessity into cosmic fire that burns without color, but consumes absolutely. Section 3. Preparation for ultimate vengeance. The preparation for what will become known as the Rain of Colorless Fire unfolds over weeks within and around Tovag Baragu. The exact details of this preparation have been lost to history, either destroyed deliberately by those who participated, or simply never recorded in the chaos of civilization's collapse. What we can piece together from later traditions and the physical evidence that remains suggests a process both rigorous and terrible, requiring sacrifice that went far beyond the physical. You begin with purification. This is consistent across all magical traditions. Any working of significant power requires the practitioner to be cleansed of distractions, attachments, and personal desires. But what the Baklunish wizard clerics undertake goes beyond normal purification. You must not merely set aside your individual concerns. You must prepare to partially unmake yourself, to give portions of your very essence to fuel the working. The purification takes many forms, varying based on each wizard cleric's particular tradition. Some enter states of deep fasting, consuming nothing but water for days on end, allowing their bodies to consume themselves until only the essential core remains. Others engage in continuous meditation, sitting motionless within Tovag Baragu's circles for periods that stretch consciousness to its limits. A few practice more active disciplines, Ritual movements repeated until the body moves without conscious thought, becoming an instrument rather than a vessel for individual will. You find yourself drawn to meditative practice. For 3 days, you sit within one of the outer circles, your back against a white pillar that radiates subtle warmth despite the devastated lands beyond. You focus on your breath, letting thoughts arise and pass like clouds across an empty sky. Hunger comes and eventually subsides. Thirst becomes a constant companion that you acknowledge, but do not answer. During these days, you confront memory. Every experience you have ever had flows through your consciousness, childhood in a world now destroyed, years of study in libraries that no longer exist, relationships with people who are now less than ash. You observe these memories without clinging to them, recognizing that your individual story is just one thread in a vast tapestry, and that thread is about to be cut short or fundamentally altered. The other wizard clerics undergo similar transformations around you. When you occasionally open your eyes, you see figures sitting in perfect stillness or moving through complex ritual patterns, or standing with arms outstretched as if receiving something from the sky. The air within Tovag Baragu grows thick with accumulated intention, with power deliberately gathered and held in check, waiting for the moment of release. Historical sources suggest that the Baklunish wizard clerics drew upon multiple sources of power for their working. Some scholars theorize they accessed planar forces through Tovag Baragu itself, which may function as a natural portal or thinning of the barriers between worlds. Others suggest they called upon divine power, praying to the Baklunish gods for aid in their cosmic rebalancing. Still, others point to purely arcane sources, elemental forces bound and redirected, or stranger magics drawn from the spaces between standard categories. Likely, the truth involves all of these. You engage in prayers to deities whose names and natures are now lost to history, asking not for mercy or aid, but for the strength to do what necessity demands. You also perform arcane calculations, determining the precise angles and alignments that will allow power to flow most efficiently from source to target. And you open yourself to the strange resonance of Tovag Baragu, feeling how the white pillars hum with energies that predate human civilization. Some preparations require physical components. You travel with small groups beyond the stone circle, moving carefully through the devastated lands to gather what is needed. The exact nature of these components remains unknown, but we can infer certain possibilities from the effect that was ultimately achieved. One group ventures to the western margins, where the invoked devastation's effects are most visible. They collect samples of the twisted glass, the scorched earth, the ash that was once living matter. These fragments carry the signature of ultimate destruction and might serve as sympathetic links, templates for the devastation you plan to unleash in turn. Another group climbs into the mountains that still stand beyond the devastation's reach. They ascend to heights where air grows thin and cold, where ordinary humans cannot long survive. There they gather wind, not merely air, but the essence of movement, change, the force that carries transformation across distances. This wind, when properly bound and released, could spread the working's effects across the vast expanse of the Suel Imperium. You participate in a different gathering. Your group travels to places where water still flows, springs emerging from deep earth, untouched by surface devastation. You collect this water in vessels that have been blessed and prepared, recognizing that water represents both life and dissolution, sustaining and eroding in equal measure. What purpose this water serves in the ultimate working, history does not record, but its collection feels necessary, right? The gathering of components takes days, each expedition carefully planned to minimize risk. The devastated lands are not empty, strange entities have begun appearing in the ruins. Things that might be spirits of the dead, or might be creatures drawn from other planes by the invoked devastation's breach of reality. You avoid these presences when possible. Defend yourselves with wards and protective magic when avoidance fails. As you work, you feel yourself changing. The purification and preparation are not merely external actions, but internal transformations. Your sense of individual selfhood begins to erode, boundaries between yourself and the other wizard clerics growing porous. During meditations, you sometimes lose track of which thoughts are yours and which belong to others in the circle. This dissolution of ego is both terrifying and necessary. The working will require you to act as one consciousness, and that unity must be forged through preparation. The sacrifice of essence requires careful calculation. Each wizard cleric must contribute power to fuel the working, but the amount must be precisely calibrated. Too little and the ritual fails. Too much and the contributor risks complete dissolution. Consciousness unraveling into the cosmic background. Theoretical frameworks from later Baklunish magical traditions suggest this involves permanently reducing one's connection to the sources of power, cutting threads that link practitioner to plane, dimming the inner light that allows magic to flow. You contemplate this sacrifice during long nights of meditation. You will survive, most likely, but you will be fundamentally less. The abilities you spent decades cultivating will be reduced by perhaps a third, maybe more. Spells that once came easily will require tremendous effort. Perceptions that were once clear will become murky. You will live as a shadow of your current self, forever marked by what you have given. And yet, you find yourself accepting this price. What is your personal power compared to the millions already lost? What is your individual future weighed against the necessity of cosmic balance? The Suel took everything from your civilization. You will give what remains of yourself to ensure they understand the consequences. The final week brings intensive collective work. The wizard clerics gather daily within Tovag Baragu's innermost circle, synchronizing their breathing, harmonizing their intentions, practicing the unity that will be required. You sit in a ring, perhaps 30 or 40 individuals. The sources vary on the exact number and focus on becoming one organism with many parts. This practice reveals the challenge ahead. Individual minds resist merging. Each wizard cleric carries unique patterns of thought, personal preferences, habitual ways of processing information. Achieving true unity requires transcending these differences without erasing them entirely. You must become both one and many simultaneously, individual perspectives, contributing to collective consciousness, rather than dissolving into uniformity. The synchronization exercises begin simply. You breathe together, matching rhythm and depth until 30 sets of lungs move as one. Then you extend this to heartbeat, using meditative techniques to slow and align cardiac rhythms. The sensation is eerie, feeling your heart adjust its pace to match others. Individual biology subordinating itself to collective pattern. From physical synchronization, you move to mental. One wizard cleric begins a chant, and others join precisely on beat, creating harmony that resonates through Tovag Baragu's stones. The words themselves are less important than the unity they create. The demonstration that separate voices can merge into a single sustained note. You feel the power building with each practice session, individual magics beginning to resonate and amplify rather than simply coexisting. During one session, something shifts. For a brief moment, perhaps seconds, perhaps longer, time becomes strange. You experience complete unity. Your consciousness merges with the others, and you perceive through dozens of perspectives simultaneously. You see the circle from every angle at once. Feel the thoughts and emotions of every participant. Understand the collective as a single vast awareness of which you are merely one facet. Then it breaks, individual consciousness reasserting itself, but the experience leaves you shaken and awed. This is what the working will require, extended maintenance of that unified state. All participants merged into a single instrument through which cosmic forces can flow. The final preparations involve rehearsing the working itself, or at least the parts that can be rehearsed without actually invoking the full power. The wizard clerics practice the gestures, the words, the precise timing of each element. Historical records suggest the ritual was complex, requiring hours to complete and perfect coordination throughout. Any significant deviation could cause the working to fail, or worse, to rebound upon the casters. The actual words and gestures have not survived, whether lost to time, deliberately destroyed, or protected by oaths of secrecy. What we know is that they involved elements drawn from multiple magical traditions, possibly incorporating both arcane formulations and divine invocations, synthesizing approaches that are normally kept separate. You practice your part countless times. Certain phrases, must be spoken with exact pronunciation, each syllable resonating at specific frequencies. Certain gestures must be performed with precise timing, hands moving through patterns that redirect and focus energy. You drill these elements until they become automatic, muscle memory and mental pattern merging so completely that you could perform them in sleep. As the appointed day approaches, you feel the weight of what is coming. The preparations are nearly complete. The purifications have been performed, the components gathered, the unity forged through weeks of intensive practice. You are as ready as mortal beings can be to channel forces that should perhaps remain forever beyond mortal reach. You spend the final night in solitary meditation, sitting alone beneath the stars that shine above the devastated lands. The sky looks different now. Dust from the invoked devastation has spread into the upper atmosphere, creating strange colors at sunset, halos around the moon. The world has already been changed by what the Suel did. Tomorrow, you will change it further. You think about the Suel Empire as it exists in this moment. Somewhere far to the east, their cities stand intact, their people going about daily lives, their leaders perhaps celebrating victory over the Baklunish threat. They do not know what is coming. They cannot imagine that the civilization they destroyed had survivors capable of such terrible response. Part of you, a part that grows smaller each day, but never quite disappears, whispers that this is wrong, that vengeance on such scale cannot be justified, that you are about to commit an atrocity equal to the one that destroyed your homeland. But another part, stronger and more certain, knows that this must be done. The Suel have proven what they are willing to do. They have shown that they possess both the power and the will to commit genocide. If they face no consequences, they will do it again and again until the entire world bends to their dominion or lies in ruins. Dawn approaches. You rise from meditation and make your way back to Tovag Baragu, where the other wizard clerics are gathering for the final time. Today, you will perform the working that your ancestors hoped would never be necessary. Today, you will speak words that should not be spoken and invoke powers that should not be claimed. Today, you will bring down upon the Suel Imperium a rain of fire that burns without color. And in that rain, balance will be restored to a cosmos torn asunder. The preparation is complete. The moment has come. Now begins the ultimate working, and with it, the end of an empire and an age. Section 4. The Rain of Colorless Fire descends. Dawn breaks over the devastated Baklunish lands, though the sun's light seems muted, filtered through atmospheric dust that will linger for years. You stand within the innermost circle of Tovag Baragu with the other surviving wizard clerics, perhaps 36 individuals, perhaps fewer, the exact number lost to history, along with so many other details of this day. The white pillars rise around you, smooth and ageless, completely unmarred despite the invoked devastation that obliterated everything beyond this sacred space. The ritual begins, though the specific words and gestures have not survived into the present age. Whether they were deliberately destroyed, protected by oaths of secrecy, or simply lost in the chaos that followed, we cannot know. What historical records do preserve is this: the Baklunish wizard clerics, gathered within Tovag Baragu's protective circles, worked together to invoke forces that would answer the Suel's devastation with devastation of their own. You feel the collective consciousness forming as the working begins. Individual awareness starts to blur at the edges, boundaries between self and others becoming porous. This is similar to what you practiced during preparation, but magnified beyond anything you experienced before. Your thoughts merge with dozens of others, creating a singular awareness vast enough to contain what is about to flow through it. The sources of power remain debated even among modern scholars. Some traditions suggest the wizard clerics drew upon forces from the quasi-elemental plane of ash, that realm where fire meets negative energy, where flame consumes even itself. Others propose that Tovag Baragu itself served as more than merely a protective location, that the ancient stone circle functions as a nexus of power, a place where the barriers between worlds grow thin enough to breach. Still, other accounts, including some attributed to later sources, suggest divine intervention, with deities or entities from beyond mortal comprehension bending dimensions to unleash unnatural elements upon the Suel realm. Likely, the truth encompasses multiple sources working in concert. You feel power flowing from directions that have no names in mortal languages, not simply up or down, north or south, but from angles that exist only in dimensions beyond the standard three. The air within the stone circle begins to shimmer and distort, space itself warping under the pressure of forces being drawn through it. The collective consciousness focuses this power, directing it eastward across vast distances toward the Suel Imperium. You can feel the working extending, reaching across leagues of devastated Baklunish land, over mountains, and through territories untouched by either civilization, finally arriving above the Suel heartland, where their empire still stands intact, their people still going about daily lives, unaware of what approaches from dimensions they cannot perceive. Time becomes strange. The ritual might take hours, or might take moments. Your perception of duration dissolves in the unified state, individual consciousness, subsumed into the greater working. You speak words that feel ancient beyond reckoning, sounds that predate language itself, utterances that reality responds to, because they address fundamental forces rather than mere material phenomena. The sacrifice of essence begins, though not through any physical action you can describe. You feel portions of yourself flowing outward, power that took decades to cultivate now, given freely to fuel the working. It is not painful in any conventional sense, more like watching pieces of your identity drift away, knowing they will never return. You become less with each passing moment, diminishing in service of this ultimate purpose. Through the merged awareness, you perceive the skies above the Suel Imperium beginning to change. Historical accounts describe this moment with eerie consistency. The heavens opened, creating what witnesses called a shining rift. This was not a simple tear or crack, but something more profound, a rupture in the normal ordering of reality, a place where other dimensions bled through into the material world. And from this rift, it begins to fall. The rain of colorless fire descends upon the Suel Empire. The name itself captures the paradoxical nature of what manifests: fire that burns without visible flame, heat that consumes beyond any normal temperature, destruction that follows no standard physical laws. Witnesses who survived at the edges describe it as nearly invisible, a shimmer in the air like heat haze, barely perceptible until it touches something, and that something begins to burn. But this burning is not like any natural fire. Through the collective consciousness, still tenuously connected to the working, you perceive the effects as they begin. The colorless fire falls upon cities and fields, upon mountains and rivers, upon millions of Suel citizens going about their morning routines. Where it touches, transformation begins, not mere combustion, but something more fundamental, a return to ash that bypasses intermediate states. Buildings do not catch fire and burn down over hours. They transform in moments, stone becoming powder, wood sublimating to gas, metal running liquid, then evaporating. The carefully constructed infrastructure of an empire that stood for over 1,000 years reduces to dust faster than those inside can flee. Citizens do not burn, they transition directly from living beings to scattered ash, consciousness ending before pain can register, existence simply revoked. The fire spreads with impossible speed and completeness. It does not leap from structure to structure seeking fuel like normal flame. Instead, it manifests simultaneously across the entire geography of the Suel Imperium, falling from the rift in the sky like rain, touching everything beneath with equal lethality. Cities and wilderness, populated centers and empty lands, all receive the same treatment: transformation into ash, reduction to dust. The world itself unmade and remade as wasteland. You feel the deaths through the fading connection, not individually, for there are too many, but as a vast wave of ending consciousness, millions of lives terminated between heartbeats. The moral weight is crushing, a burden so immense it threatens to shatter what remains of your individual awareness. You are participating in genocide, the wholesale annihilation of a civilization, and no amount of justification can fully reconcile you to this reality. The collective consciousness wavers as some participants struggle with what they are causing. But the working has momentum now, fed by the sacrificed essence, channeled through Tovag Baragu's ancient power, drawn from sources beyond mortal control. It cannot be stopped, even if you wish to stop it. The Rain of Colorless Fire will continue until the dimensions bent to create it snap back into their normal configuration. And that will not happen until the working is complete. Through the merged awareness, you witness the Suel capital, whose name is lost to history, though some sources suggest it might have been called Roxas or similar, transforming from metropolis to dust field in the span of minutes. Towers that took centuries to construct crumble in seconds. Gardens cultivated by generations of artisans return to component elements. The centers of learning, the repositories of magical knowledge, the palaces and temples and monuments to Suel greatness, all of it dissolving like structures made of sand before a wave. The transformation extends beyond mere physical destruction. The land itself changes. Fertile soil becomes ash. Rivers boil away, leaving channels that immediately fill with settling dust. Forests vanish, leaving not even stumps, just flat expanses of powder where ancient trees once stood. Mountains erode, their stone burned to ash that the wind immediately begins to scatter and reshape. Some Suel are far enough east to survive the initial manifestation. They stand at the margins and watch their homeland vanish before their eyes, the sky above turning strange colors as billions of tons of ash rise into the atmosphere. The psychological impact on these survivors must be profound, witnessing the annihilation of everything they knew, everyone they loved, the entire context of their existence simply erased. A few Suel mages attempt countermeasures, powerful protective wards meant to resist magical effects. But the colorless fire exists in the space between magic and physics, exploiting categories that standard defensive spells cannot address. Their protections touch it and simply slide off, unable to find purchase on something that is not entirely real in any conventional sense. Some wards hold briefly, creating pockets of temporary safety, but these refuges are short-lived. The power depletes, the barriers fail, and the fire claims them as it claims everything else. The duration of the reign itself is unclear in historical records. Some accounts suggest it fell for hours, others imply days. From within the ritual consciousness, you cannot measure time meaningfully. You exist in an extended present where the working simply is, and you are part of it. And the Suel Empire is ending beneath colorless flames that burn even stone to powder. Gradually, you feel the working approaching completion. The power flowing through the collective consciousness begins to ebb. The dimensions that were bent to allow unnatural elements into the material world start returning to their normal configuration. The rift in the sky above the Suel lands begins to close, the source of the colorless fire diminishing. But the fire itself does not simply vanish. Historical evidence suggests it continued burning for some time after the initial manifestation, perhaps days, perhaps longer. Some theories propose that dimensional rifts remained open in scattered locations, continuing to feed the flames. Others suggest the fire became partially self-sustaining, fed by the very destruction it caused, creating feedback loops that would persist for years. What is certain is that when the fire finally ceased, when the last flames burned themselves out, and the ash settled into new configurations, the Suel Imperium was gone, where fertile lands once supported millions, where cities stood as monuments to civilization's heights, where an empire ruled with power, both terrible and magnificent. There remained only dust, billions of tons of fine ash covering everything, deep enough in places to drown in, forming an ocean of powder that would bear their name forever. The sea of dust. The collective consciousness fragments as the working releases its hold. 30-some minds that were briefly one return to being separate, though none will ever be fully separate again after such profound merging. You gasp as individual awareness reasserts itself, your lungs drawing breath that feels foreign after existing outside normal physicality, your heart beating a rhythm that is yours alone after matching it to dozens of others. You open your physical eyes and find yourself collapsed within Tovag Baragu's innermost circle. Around you, other wizard clerics are doing the same, gasping, weeping, or simply staring at nothing with expressions of profound trauma. Some have died, their physical forms unable to sustain the strain of channeling forces meant to remain forever beyond mortal reach. Their bodies lie peaceful in the center of the circle, final sacrifices to the working's completion. You look at your hands, and they seem alien, belonging to someone else, marked by what they have done. You have channeled power sufficient to unmake an empire spoken words that cracked the barriers between dimensions, brought into being fire that burns without burning and destroys beyond destruction. You have participated in the annihilation of millions, the reduction of an entire civilization to ash and memory. The connection to the distant lands is severing now, but you feel echoes of what has been wrought. The sky above the former Suel Imperium carries a strange quality, reality itself scarred by the dimensional rifts that were opened and may never fully close. The dust settles into patterns that will shift with every wind for thousands of years. An ocean of ash that will endure as the ultimate monument to the consequences of ultimate power, wielded without restraint. You feel the permanent diminishment within yourself. The essence you sacrificed is truly gone, your power reduced by perhaps a third or more, your connection to magical forces dimmed in ways that will never fully heal. You will live, most likely, but you will be forever less than you were, marked by this working in ways both visible and invisible. The Suel Imperium is ended. The Rain of Colorless Fire has fallen, burned even rock to ash, created a wasteland that will persist for millennia. And you, who helped bring this devastation into being, must now find some way to continue existing in a world where such things are possible, where cosmic balance requires cosmic destruction, where the price of answering atrocity is becoming complicit in atrocity yourself. The ritual is complete. The rift in distant skies is closing. And in the settling silence within Tovag Baragu, you begin to understand the full weight of what has been done, the terrible necessity that has transformed you from scholar and mystic into instrument of apocalypse, forever marked by the day when colorless fire rained from heaven and an empire burned to dust. Section 5. The Annihilation of the Suel Imperium. You lie on the ground within Tovag Baragu, your breath coming in ragged gasps, your body trembling from the aftershock of channeling forces beyond mortal comprehension. But even as you struggle to recenter yourself in physical form, your awareness extends outward, not through deliberate effort, but through residual connections that linger from the working. You cannot help but perceive what unfolds in the distant east, cannot close your inner eye to the consequences of what you have wrought. The Suel Imperium, which dominated the eastern lands for over 1,000 years, is ending. Historical records confirm the completeness of this destruction, though the specific details of how it unfolded moment by moment have been lost. What we know with certainty is the result. Where a mighty empire once stood, only the sea of dust would remain, a wasteland so complete that it persists even in the present age, over a millennium later, still largely lifeless and uninhabitable. Through the fading connection, you sense the transformation of the Suel heartland. The capital city, whose name has not survived, lost along with so much else, experiences what all Suel population centers experience. The colorless fire that falls from the dimensional rift does not discriminate between palace and hovel, between guilty and innocent, between those who ordered the invoked devastation and those who never knew it was planned. Cities that took centuries to build dissolve in minutes or hours. The accounts that survive from those who witnessed from a distance speak of watching the horizon change, seeing towers and structures that had defined the landscape for generations simply vanish, replaced by rising clouds of ash. The transformation is so rapid, so complete, that those close enough to see detail describe it as unreal, like watching a dream or vision rather than physical events. The populace has no meaningful chance to flee. The colorless fire manifests across the entire geography of the Suel Imperium nearly simultaneously, falling like precipitation from the rift that has opened in the heavens above their lands. Those who attempt escape find the fire already present in the directions they run. Those who seek shelter in cellars or caves find the fire seeping through stone itself, or transforming the structures above them so that they collapse into suffocating dust. Based on what later refugees reported, we can infer that the effect was mercifully swift for most. The fire does not burn in the conventional sense. It transforms, transmutes, returns matter to ash faster than nervous systems can register pain. Consciousness ends before suffering begins. This is small mercy, perhaps, but it is all the mercy the working allows. The Suel mages, who survived their campaign against the Baklunish, the mages of power, who conceived and cast the invoked devastation, experience the Rain of Colorless Fire along with everyone else. Their vast accumulated knowledge provides no defense. Their powerful artifacts offer no protection. They recognize, in their final moments, what is happening. They understand that they are being answered in kind, that the Baklunish found a way to respond to ultimate weapon with ultimate weapon. Then they cease, their consciousness ending, their physical forms returning to dust. The destruction extends far beyond urban centers. The fertile agricultural lands that fed the empire transform into ash. Rivers and lakes vanish, water boiling away, leaving channels and basins that immediately fill with settling dust from the surrounding devastation. Forests that covered thousands of square miles become powder. Every tree, every living thing, simply unmade. Even the topology of the land changes as mountains erode and valleys fill, the geography itself altered by the thoroughness of the transformation. Some Suel survive. Historical records make this clear. Suel peoples persist in the present age, descended from those who were far enough east, or who fled early enough, or who were simply fortunate enough to be beyond the working's range when it manifested. These survivors witness the destruction of their homeland from safe distances, watching the sky turn colors that defy description as ash fills the upper atmosphere, feeling the psychic shock of uncountable deaths occurring simultaneously. Among these survivors are nobles and commoners, mages and warriors, entire communities that happen to be in the eastern provinces or traveling abroad when the rain fell. They become refugees, scattered peoples, carrying with them memories of the Suel Imperium's glory and the trauma of its catastrophic end. From these survivors will come the Suel peoples of later ages, the Scarlet Brotherhood and other groups who preserve Suel culture and bloodlines, forever marked by the knowledge of what their empire once was and how completely it fell. A few of the more powerful Suel mages at the margins attempt to create zones of protection. Historical accounts suggest some brief successes, areas where the colorless fire could not fully manifest, where buildings remained standing while everything around them transformed to dust. But these refuges proved temporary. The dimensional forces at work are too vast, too persistent. One by one, the protective wards deplete their energy and fail. The last standing structure in each city eventually succumbs, following everything else into dust. The eastern margins of what was the Suel Imperium become zones of partial transformation. Here, the colorless fire's effects are less complete, possibly because the working stretched to the limits of its range, or because the dimensional rift above their lands was weaker at the periphery. buildings half-transform, creating surreal structures, walls without roofs, foundations without buildings, fragments of civilization standing isolated in seas of ash. These transitional zones will eventually be absorbed into the expanding sea of dust as winds redistribute the billions of tons of powder. But in the immediate aftermath, they serve as landmarks for survivors trying to comprehend the incomprehensible. Through your fading awareness of the distant catastrophe, you perceive the dust beginning to settle. The initial phase of transformation is complete. What was an empire spanning hundreds of thousands of square miles is now an ocean of ash, fine powder in some places, coarser particles in others, but fundamentally the same. Matter returned to its most basic particulate state. Civilization reduced to its component atoms and scattered by wind. The dust itself carries strange properties that will persist for ages. Scholars who study the sea of dust in later centuries report anomalies, areas where reality remains unstable, where the barriers between planes never fully healed after being breached to create the Rain of Colorless Fire. Some speak of visions experienced by those who venture into the deep dust, glimpses of the civilization that once stood there, echoes of the millions who died when the fire fell. Whether these are genuine spiritual phenomena or merely the mind's attempt to process the magnitude of loss, none can say with certainty. The sky above the transformed lands remains strange for days, perhaps weeks. The sheer volume of ash thrown into the atmosphere creates effects visible from hundreds of miles away, sunsets of colors that have no names, aurora-like phenomena as dust particles catch and scatter light in unusual ways, the sun itself appearing dimmed and reddened when viewed through the particulate haze. The Suel who survived far enough east organize what they can. Historical evidence suggests they attempted expeditions back into their homeland, hoping to find survivors, salvage possessions, understand what had happened. These expeditions found nothing but dust. Landmarks were gone. Cities were indistinguishable from countryside. The entire geography had been flattened and homogenized, transformed into a wasteland where navigation became nearly impossible, and survival required resources they didn't possess. Some refugees refused to accept the totality of the destruction. They spoke of hidden sanctuaries that must have survived, of protective magic strong enough to resist even the colorless fire, of relatives who must be alive somewhere in the ash. But subsequent exploration over generations confirmed the terrible truth. The sea of dust was complete. Nothing of significance survived within the Empire's heartland. Everything and everyone there had been transformed to powder. The refugees begin migrating further east into the Flannies, seeking new lands to settle. They carry with them what remained memories, a few artifacts that survived because they were outside the destruction zone, cultural knowledge passed orally from those who remembered the Empire before its fall. These migrants will reshape the eastern lands, bringing Suel blood and culture to regions that previously knew neither, creating new kingdoms and societies that claim descent from the fallen empire, but never approach its scope or power. In your sanctuary at Tovag Baragu, you feel the final severance of the connection to the distant devastation. Your awareness pulls fully back into your own diminished form, the residual links created by the working dissolve, leaving you isolated once more within your individual consciousness. What you witnessed, what you caused, will remain with you forever. But you no longer perceive it directly. The Suel Imperium has fallen beyond your sight, as it has fallen beyond existence. You sit up slowly, looking around at the other surviving wizard clerics. Some are weeping silently. Others stare at nothing, their expressions haunted by what they experienced through the merged consciousness. A few have withdrawn completely into meditation, seeking escape from the moral weight of genocide through dissolution of self into cosmic emptiness. Several bodies lie motionless, those who did not survive the working, whose physical forms could not withstand the strain of channeling dimensional forces, or whose consciousness fragmented beyond recovery when the collective awareness dispersed. They will be honored, mourned, and laid to rest with full recognition of their sacrifice. But even this grief feels distant, small compared to the vast ocean of death you have just created. You look at your hands and see them trembling. These hands participated in the annihilation of a civilization. Through these hands flowed power that transformed millions of living beings into scattered ash. No amount of justification, not the invoked devastation, not cosmic balance, not the necessity of preventing future Suel expansion, can fully reconcile you to what you have done. The Suel Imperium is gone. Historical records from this point forward speak of it only in past tense, as a civilization that was, a power that fell, an empire reduced to the sea of dust. The Twin Cataclysms, invoked devastation, and Rain of Colorless Fire have reshaped the world, creating wastelands that will endure for millennia. Monuments to the consequences of ultimate power wielded without restraint. You close your eyes and see dust settling over what was once an empire. Billions of tons of powder coating everything in gray uniformity. This is what ultimate vengeance looks like, not glorious, not righteous, not even particularly satisfying, just ash and dust and silence, and the weight of millions of deaths pressing down on your conscience like physical mass. The Suel Imperium has been annihilated. The balance has been struck. And you, the instrument of that annihilation, must now find some way to continue existing in a world where such things are not only possible, but necessary, where the only response to genocide is genocide in turn, where cosmic justice requires becoming complicit in atrocity. Section 6. Twin Wastelands and the End of Empires. The weeks that follow the Rain of Colorless Fire blur together, in exhaustion and grief. You remain at Tovag Baragu for a time. How long? You cannot say with certainty. The ancient stone circle that protected you during the invoked devastation and served as the nexus for your terrible response now becomes a sanctuary of mourning, a place where the surviving wizard clerics process what has been done. The bodies of those who died during the working are prepared with what honors can be offered. Later Baklunish traditions suggest elaborate funeral rites for those who sacrifice themselves in service of cosmic balance. But in this immediate aftermath, simpler ceremonies must suffice. You wrap them in whatever cloth remains, speak prayers to deities whose temples no longer stand, and lay them to rest in the earth beyond Tovag Baragu's outermost circle. You feel hollowed out, diminished in ways that extend far beyond the power you sacrificed to fuel the working. The essence you gave is truly gone. Spells that once came easily now require immense effort. Perceptions that were once clear now arrive murky and uncertain. You will never again be what you were before the ritual. This permanent reduction is the price you paid, and you will carry it until your death and perhaps beyond. Slowly, as physical strength returns, you begin to venture beyond the stone circle's protection. The first time you stand on the margins between Tovag Baragu and the devastated lands beyond, you are struck by the wrongness that pervades everything. The invoked devastation transformed the Baklunish heartland into what will become known as the Dry Steppes, a harsh, waterless expanse where once fertile territories supported millions. Historical records describe this region as remaining largely uninhabitable for generations, though eventually hardy peoples will adapt to its harsh conditions. When you look eastward, toward where the Suel Empire stood, you see evidence of what you wrought even from this great distance. The sky carries a brownish tinge, atmospheric dust from the sea of dust, visible even hundreds of miles away. Sunsets have changed. Where they once showed clear progressions of color, they now include strange intermediate shades, light scattering off particles that are ash from an annihilated empire. The other wizard clerics emerge as well, drawn by the same need to witness, to confirm that the world beyond still exists. You gather on elevated ground overlooking the western approaches, perhaps a dozen or two individuals who were once 3 dozen or more, looking out at the twin wastelands your civilizations created. One of the elder survivors speaks, her voice carrying the weight of profound exhaustion. We have done what our ancestors hoped would never be necessary. We have answered ultimate weapon with ultimate weapon, devastation with devastation, and now we must live with the consequences, however long our remaining lives may be. Another gestures westward, toward the transformed Baklunish lands. The invoked devastation created the Dry Steppes, where our empire's heartland once flourished. Some life will return eventually. Grasses that can survive without regular water creatures adapted to harsh conditions, nomadic peoples who learn to thrive where settled civilization cannot. But the cities, the centers of learning, the accumulated wisdom of millennia, gone forever. She turns eastward, and we created that the sea of dust where the Suel Imperium stood. Historical accounts from later ages confirm it remains largely lifeless even centuries after its creation. Nothing grows there, no cities rise. It is simply empty, dead, a monument to destruction so complete that the land itself may never recover. You feel the terrible symmetry of it. Twin wastelands, twin cataclysms, twin civilizations reduced to memory and dust. The Baklunish and Suel empires dominated the known world for over 1,000 years, raising civilization to heights both magnificent and terrible. And in the span of weeks, you destroyed each other so completely that little coherent remains of either. The younger survivors, those who will have to live longest with what was done, speak their concerns. What becomes of us now? We are the last direct links to the Baklunish Empire, the final living repositories of our traditions and knowledge. Do we have responsibilities to preserve what we can? Or do we simply fade away, letting our civilization pass into legend? The question hangs in the air, unanswered. Around you, the white pillars of Tovag Baragu stand impassive, unchanged by the catastrophes that raged around them. This ancient place will outlast everything, your lives, your civilizations, even the physical scars the Twin Cataclysms left upon the world. In the months and years that follow, the surviving wizard clerics disperse. There is no formal dissolution, no moment when the group consciously decides to separate. Individuals simply begin to drift away, drawn by different purposes, different ways of processing the trauma and seeking meaning in the aftermath. Some join the Baklunish refugees who are beginning the Great Migrations. Historical records indicate that perhaps 2 million Baklunish survived the invoked devastation out of a population that may have been 20 million or more, though exact figures are impossible to verify. These survivors move in all directions, seeking lands untouched by catastrophe, carrying with them what could be salvaged of Baklunish culture and knowledge. You travel with one of these migrant groups for a time, using your diminished power to ease their journey, finding water sources, warning of dangers, maintaining protective wards against the strange entities that haunt the margins of the devastated lands. You do this not from duty, but from need. If you stop moving, stop helping, stop focusing on immediate survival, your mind returns to the ritual and what it accomplished. Motion becomes escape, however temporary. The migrations reshape the map of the known world. Some Baklunish move north, eventually establishing themselves in regions that will become known for nomadic cultures. Others move south and west, following the arc of habitable land around the dry steppes margins. The largest groups move in patterns that will eventually lead to the formation of successor states. Historical records name Saif, Ekbir, and Tusmit, among others, as kingdoms that arise from these refugee communities, each preserving aspects of Baklunish culture while adapting to new circumstances. These successor states maintain the Baklunish magical and philosophical traditions, though necessarily transformed by the catastrophe. The synthesis of arcane and divine power that characterized the wizard clerics continues in modified forms. The emphasis on balance, harmony, and understanding cosmic forces persists, but tempered by hard-won knowledge of power's limits and the consequences of its misuse. The Suel diaspora follows similar patterns, but in opposite directions. Millions who survived in the eastern territories and beyond scatter across the Flannies, moving into lands previously occupied by other peoples, or finding territories in the continent's vast interior. Historical sources document this migration extensively, the Suel bringing their culture, their magical knowledge, and their distinctive physical characteristics to regions that had never known them. These Suel refugees carry complex legacies. Some remember their empire's glory and seek to recreate it, preserving Suel culture in pure forms, maintaining bloodlines, passing down knowledge of what was lost. Others integrate with the peoples they encounter, creating hybrid cultures that blend Suel traditions with local practices. Still, others react against what their empire became, rejecting the philosophy of power and dominance that led to the Twin Cataclysms, seeking different paths forward. The encounters between scattered Baklunish and Suel peoples in the Flannies create tensions that persist for generations. Each group sees in the other the authors of their civilization's destruction. Violence erupts sometimes, old hatreds finding new expression in personal conflicts and community feuds. But other times, surprising reconciliations occur, individuals from both peoples recognizing their shared trauma, understanding that they are all survivors of the same fundamental tragedy, choosing to build something new rather than perpetuating ancient enmities. Years pass. The wastelands stabilize into permanent features of the landscape. The dry steppes, while harsh, prove capable of supporting certain forms of life. Nomadic tribes learn the safe paths, the locations where water can sometimes be found, the signs that indicate areas of lingering instability. They develop cultures shaped by the devastation, viewing the transformed lands not as tragedy, but simply as environment, the world as it is rather than as it was. The sea of dust proves more resistant to life. Explorers who venture into its depths, treasure seekers, hoping to salvage artifacts from the fallen empire, or simply adventurers drawn by the mystery of a civilization completely erased, report a landscape utterly divorced from normal experience. Dust stretches from horizon to horizon, deep enough in places to drown in, constantly reshaped by winds into dunes and valleys that shift with every storm. navigation becomes nearly impossible. Survival requires resources few possess. These explorers also report phenomena that suggest the dimensional rifts opened to create the Rain of Colorless Fire, never fully healed. Strange lights move through the dust at night, following no predictable patterns. Sounds echo from sources that cannot be located. Some speak of visions, glimpses of the Suel Empire as it was before the fall, cities and peoples rendered in translucent detail before dissolving back into dust. Whether these represent genuine spiritual remnants or merely the mind's attempt to process impossible desolation, scholars debate without resolution. Along the margins, where the sea of dust gives way to degraded but functional land, settlements eventually arise. Suel refugees and other peoples establish communities that extract what value they can from proximity to the wasteland, rare minerals that survive the transformation, strange artifacts occasionally revealed by shifting dust, knowledge gained from studying the effects of ultimate magic on physical reality. These border towns develop distinctive cultures, shaped by living beside the monument to their ancestors' hubris. You continue aging, decades passing, your body showing the wear of years and the permanent damage from the ritual. Your diminished power fades further with time, not because you use it poorly, but because that is the nature of what you sacrificed. You gave portions of your very essence to fuel the Rain of Colorless Fire, and what remains slowly erodes like a river, wearing away its banks. Other survivors of the working experience similar decline. You hear occasionally of their deaths, individuals who argued beside you in the terrible council, who stood with you in Tovag Baragu during the ritual, who shared the burden of what was done. Each death removes another direct witness, another living link to the civilizations that destroyed each other. Eventually, you will be the last, and then you too will pass, and only indirect knowledge will remain. You spend your later years documenting what happened, writing accounts that attempt to preserve the truth, not sanitized versions or propaganda from either side, but the full terrible complexity of the Twin Cataclysms. You describe the invoked devastation as the Baklunish experienced it, the sudden obliteration of everything, the transformation of fertile lands to wasteland, the millions of lives simply erased. You describe the Rain of Colorless Fire from the perspective of those who brought it into being, the moral struggle, the terrible necessity, the permanent cost paid by those who channeled forces meant to remain forever beyond mortal reach. You do not know if these accounts will survive. Much knowledge has been lost in the catastrophe's aftermath, and more will be lost as the generations pass and direct memory fades into legend. But you write anyway, driven by the need to ensure that future ages understand what happened and why. That the twin wastelands are not simply natural features, but deliberate creations, monuments to the consequences of ultimate power wielded by civilizations who possessed the ability, but not the wisdom to refrain. Eventually, you make your final journey back to Tovag Baragu. The ancient stone circle remains exactly as you left it decades before, the white pillars unmarred, the concentric rings perfect, the whole structure radiating that subtle sense of existing slightly outside normal time and space. You are old now, far beyond natural lifespan, kept alive by residual magic and sheer stubbornness more than physical vitality. You sit within the innermost circle one final time, your back against the same pillar you leaned on during the preparations for the Rain of Colorless Fire. The stone is cool and smooth, unchanged by the passage of years that have bent your body and dimmed your awareness. You close your eyes and feel the weight of decades, the accumulation of memory and regret and hard-won understanding. Were you right to do it? The question has haunted you since the ritual's completion, and you are no closer to a definitive answer now than you were then. The Suel committed an atrocity beyond comprehension, and you responded with an atrocity of equal magnitude. Does that make you instruments of cosmic justice, or simply monsters who justified their monstrosity? The universe offers no opinion. It simply continues, indifferent to human concerns about righteousness and retribution. But you can offer this to whatever future exists. The Twin Cataclysms demonstrate that ultimate weapons bring only ultimate destruction. The invoked devastation and the Rain of Colorless Fire created wastelands that will endure for thousands of years. The dry steppes and the sea of dust standing as eternal reminders that some powers should never be claimed. Some lines should never be crossed. When civilizations develop the capacity to unmake each other, they face a choice: restraint or mutual annihilation. The Baklunish and Suel chose annihilation, and the scars left upon the world testify to that choice. You feel your end approaching now, not suddenly, but as a gradual fading, the final erosion of life force that has sustained you far beyond natural span. It comes not as tragedy, but as relief, release from the burden of memory and guilt. You have carried the knowledge of what you did for decades. You have lived with the weight of millions of deaths for which you bear partial responsibility. Now, finally, you can set that burden down. You close your eyes and let go, your consciousness fragmenting and dispersing, returning to the cosmic background from which it arose. Your final thought is not of regret or justification, but of hope. Hope that future ages will look upon the twin wastelands and understand that they will develop the wisdom your civilizations lacked, that they will possess power without using it, achieve strength without seeking dominance, resolve conflicts without resorting to ultimate weapons. Tovag Baragu falls silent. The white pillars continue their eternal vigil, unchanged and unchanging. Above, the wind carries dust from two dead empires across a world forever changed by their hubris. The twin cataclysms are complete. The civilizations that dominated an age are gone. What remains are wastelands, scattered peoples, memories, and warnings. The dry steppes and the sea of dust will stand for millennia as monuments to what transpired here. Future generations will look upon them and tell stories about the invoked devastation and the Rain of Colorless Fire, about civilizations that rose to incredible heights only to destroy each other in their fall. These stories will be incomplete, details lost or transformed in retelling, but their essential truth will persist. Ultimate power demands ultimate responsibility, and failure brings consequences that echo through ages. Perhaps they will learn. Perhaps seeing the twin wastelands, understanding the magnitude of mutual destruction, future civilizations will choose differently. Perhaps they will develop the wisdom to possess power without wielding it, to achieve strength without pursuing dominance, to resolve conflicts without escalating to ultimate weapons. Or perhaps not. Perhaps the cycle will repeat. New civilizations will rise and fall, and the world will accumulate more scars, more wastelands, more monuments to the eternal tension between humanity's capacity for both creation and destruction. The universe does not predetermine these outcomes. Each generation writes its own story through the choices it makes when faced with power that could unmake the world. The age of the Twin Empires is ended. The age of dust and memory has begun. And from that dust, eventually, new life will grow. New civilizations will rise, carrying within them the seeds of their own potential greatness and destruction. The story continues, as it always does, written in the choices made by each generation faced with the terrible gift of power, and the question of how to wield it, or whether to wield it at all. The Rain of Colorless Fire has fallen. The account is complete. The twin wastelands endure, eternal witnesses to what transpired when two mighty empires, unable to find paths of coexistence, chose instead the certainty of mutual annihilation. Remember them. Remember what they built and what they destroyed. Remember that ultimate power brings ultimate responsibility, and that failure in that responsibility creates scars that outlast empires, outlast ages, outlast even the memories of those who caused them. Learn, choose wisely, or add your own wasteland to the world's collection of monuments to hubris. The choice, as it always has been, belongs to those who possess power and must decide what to do with it.